Well, hello, everyone. This is Steve Bevans, as many of you will know. And I've been asked to do a recording of something that I wrote a couple of weeks ago. It was kind of at the request of Annette Hulefeld, who asked me, could you share some stuff about what's going on with you during this time of, whatever you want to call it, lockdown, or as the Italians call it, house arrest. Staying at home, that whole thing, and you know, I'm a theologian, and so what I've been really struggling with is God, uh, the question of God and where God is in all of this, and so I wrote this piece, and I'm going to include at the end what I said at the end when I first wrote it, which is to say something about Annette and also some greetings to you. But I'm just going to read it the way I wrote it, and I hope that this will make some kind of sense to you. It's what I'm trying to make sense out of in this whole time. So the title of my little reflection is a little bit, oh, what do you say? Maybe shocking, but it's called Does God Love the Coronavirus? My friend and colleague, Diane Brigance, is fond of saying that there's no such thing as bad weather. There's only weather that inconveniences humans. Diane's thinking and faith is strongly influenced by ecological consciousness. And so she has realized that we human beings are not the center of the universe or above the rest of creation. We are really part of it. Like everything else in the universe, our bodies are made of the same stuff as the atoms and molecules and gases that formed the galaxies and stars and planets billions of years ago, long before even life emerged, and certainly long before human beings appeared on this earth. We are not in the universe, we are the universe. Weather happens. Sometimes it gets in humans' way. Diane's words came to mind as I pondered a question that's bothered me in the last 2 months or so during this pandemic. Does God love the coronavirus? When the question popped into my head, I was shocked. Could God actually love something that was wreaking havoc in our human lives, our families, our economy, our usual way of life? As I wrestled and prayed with the question, however, I had to say yes. God loves every particle of creation, even parts of creation that cause pain and suffering in other parts, even parts of creation that may cause creation to go awry. God loves the mother cheetah who hobbles the young gazelle so that her young may learn to hunt. God loves the pair of pelicans who hatch 2 eggs but push the younger chick out of the nest so that the older, stronger one will survive. God loves the coronavirus despite the fact that it has, after perhaps billions of years of existence somewhere in China, crossed paths with human beings. And God loves human beings. This current pandemic is not God's will. It is not a punishment for anything wrong that human beings have done, which is actually quite considerable throughout the relative brevity of human history. It is not a test of our faith. This pandemic is a tragic collision of two of God's beloved creatures in the evolving free world that God created and is still creating every second, every day. Most likely, and again, tragically, human beings may have brought this collision on. The accidental disturbance of the virus, the carelessness in the Wuhan wet market, suppression of the virus's danger to humans for political reasons in China, the world's leaders not taking the danger seriously at first, people refusing to practice social distancing, countries and states perhaps easing restrictions too early. But in a universe that is created to evolve in freedom, this is not God's doing. God loves the coronavirus, and God loves human beings. And so, God suffers. Richard Rohr always says that when you love, you will suffer. And this is what God does. And God is with us in our suffering, in our fears, our uncertainty, our anger, and our lamentations. Elizabeth Johnson writes that God, who is love, is there in solidarity with the creatures shot through with pain and finished by death. There is in the God-forsaken moment, as only the giver of life can be, with the promise of something more. This is the point of Jesus's cross. In the incarnation, God has become one of us, part of the stuff of the universe. And in Jesus' suffering, God knows what human pain is. In Jesus' suffering, moreover, Jesus even knows the pain of the young gazelle or the young pelican. Again, as Johnson writes, the cross gives warrant for locating the compassion of God right at the center of affliction. The pelican chick does not die alone. But God not only suffers with us, the giver of life, as Johnson says, promises something more. God's Spirit is present and active within this tragic pandemic, stirring up new life, new hope, new energy, new vision, new awareness. To give just a few examples, we have had our eyes opened to the inequalities in our world, in our nation, and in our city, as we see how the poor are much more likely to be victims of the virus than the more affluent. We see the results of our country's lack of adequate health insurance. We see the ugly side of individualism as people disregard stay-at-home orders. Perhaps the Spirit is stirring us to action now, and when we return, and I have a question mark there, to some kind of normality, normalcy. Perhaps as well, the Spirit is stirring us to see new possibilities in our relationships with one another. We see, despite the reality of Zoom fatigue, the promise of technology for the future. We can be thankful in myriad ways for the wonder of the internet, for radio and television. I don't know what I'd do without WFMT in these days. We see new possibilities and are asking new questions about sacramental presence and sacramental absolution. We have renewed our longing for community and community worship. But perhaps we have found surprising alternatives. Maybe we have discovered the blessings of solitude and making do with what's in our pantries. So many books, so little time, we often say. Well, we have the time now. And we can be sure that the Spirit is stirring in the hearts of the women and men who are working in our hospitals, our grocery stores, our transportation facilities, our sanitation departments, our pastors, our government leaders, well, many of them anyway, and giving them the courage and wisdom to carry on and to lead. I really think Anthony Fauci is a saint. The Spirit is stirring up scientists' minds for treatments of the sick and preventive vaccines. The Spirit is stirring the imagination of our musicians and poets and artists to help us get through this terrible time. And I think she is stirring up our hope. I think she's stirring up mine. A week ago or so, Annette Hulefeld asked me if I would write something on how I am doing and what I'm struggling with in this time of quarantine and sheltering in place. This is the stuff I'm struggling with, and these reflections are the result. Like so many of us, I'm struggling to make sense out of this dangerous, unprecedented time. My hope is that these reflections might help others make sense of them too, especially you, my sisters and brothers at the St. Giles Family Mass community. Love to you all. I really miss you.